BMW is one manufacturer that's determined to leave no niche unfilled, and that's why we have this, the X4. It's a compact SUV coupe, which is essentially a baby X6. It's based on the X3, only it sacrifices some practicality in the interests of style. The most obvious change is that sloping roofline, which is supposed to make the X4 look like a sports car on stilts. Now, if you don't fully understand BMW's numbering strategy, let me just try and explain it to you. So the cars with the odd numbers in their names, such as the 1s, the 3s, the 5s and the 7s, they're the normal, sensible cars. Those with an even number in their names, such as the 2s, the 4s and the 6s, they're the more desirable sporty models, and yes, they do cost more money, but they also come with extra kit. That's why the X4 is very well equipped. Even entry-level SE cars get a decent amount of standard equipment, including xenon headlamps, dual-zone climate control, digital radio, cruise control, leather upholstery, parking sensors, Bluetooth and USB connectivity. It also gets the latest iDrive system with touch-sensitive letter and number recognition, plus sat-nav, though this car has the upgraded sat-nav system, which includes the larger widescreen display. That's probably the best sat-nav system I've used in any car, and I really like the traffic management function. It's a bit like Google Maps, so it shows you where there's jams on your route. For instance, green lines mean the traffic's flowing well, yellow lines mean it's getting a bit sticky, and the red lines mean there's a bit of a jam. It'll also show you where there's some roadworks so you can avoid those, and when you put your destination in, it'll obviously work out the best route to avoid those traffic black spots, and it'll give you an accurate estimated time of arrival. Now, I've been in cars with sat-nav systems that reckon you can get across London in half an hour in the middle of the day, which is completely bonkers. This is much wiser, and it's a bit like having a London cabbie sat next to you giving you directions. It is that good. Like I said at the beginning, the X4 is based on the X3, so you get the same grippy all-wheel drive system. Now, the X3 is one of the better handling SUVs, and the X4 actually moves that on a little bit further because you've got slightly lower and stiffer suspension, and as a result it just goes around corners with that little bit more finesse, so it's actually quite a good fun car to drive. The good news is there's no serious trade-off in terms of comfort, though M Sport models do have a slightly stiffer suspension setup and bigger wheels, so ride a little bit firmer, but it's never bad. If you want the M Sport model with all its extra trinkets, such as the bigger grille, the chunky steering wheel, although to be fair, I don't really like this chunky steering wheel, it's a bit too fat. Well, if you want that, but you still want the comfiest suspension possible, then I suggest you go for the adaptive dampers. And they're an optional extra, but they're less than £1,000, and it does mean that when you press this button down here, you can choose between sport and comfort mode, so as well as changing the throttle response and the speed of the shifts of the automatic gearbox if you've got it, and the weight of the steering, you can alter the stiffness of the suspension. You can even toggle it so that you have the car in sporty setup for the throttle response, but you can have the comfort setup for the suspension, and generally that's the way that I like to travel in this car. Overall, the X4 is a relaxing car to travel in, plus it's a very quiet car at speed. It should be a pleasant car to own as well, as it's based on the X3, and that came 12th in the 2014 Driver Power Owner Satisfaction Survey, which is a very good score. Here in Britain, you can only get the X4 with diesel engines. There's no petrols available at all, but before you get a little bit upset about that, let me just say that BMW's diesels are the best in the business. And the range kicks off with a 2-litre diesel in the X4 20D, which can return 54 miles per gallon, yet will still get from 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, which, let's be honest, is probably going to be fast enough for most people. However, if you want more performance, there are the 3-litre diesel engines. This is the 30D, which is really quick, but if you want to go for the top of the range one, it's the 35D, and that will still return 47 miles per gallon, which isn't bad at all. Yet it can get from 0 to 62 miles an hour in just 5.3 seconds. Now let me put that into perspective for you. That is as quick as an M3 was 10 years ago. The 3-litre models come with an 8-speed automatic gearbox as standard. However, it's an option on the 2-litre, but it's one well worth paying the extra for. Why? Well, it's because it's just so good. I mean, I like putting it in manual mode and controlling the gear shifts myself, and you're probably saying, well, why not just get a manual? Well, if you ask me, BMW's manuals aren't that good. The shift seems a bit springy and the pedals are always offset. I mean, they're offset a little bit in this automatic, but you don't notice it because you've only got 2 pedals. When you have 3 in there, when you add the clutch pedal, it feels like your feet are almost right over the right hand side of the vehicle. So far, this review has been rather glowing, but there are a few things that let the X4 down, such as how the interior design is identical to the X3's, which means it's been around for almost 4 years, and this is a brand new car. Really, the X4 could have done with a sportier look inside. The biggest issue with the X4 though is that it's nowhere near as practical as the X3. For instance, these rear doors, they don't open particularly wide, so that if you're trying to struggle with a baby seat, it could be a bit of a nightmare. And then when you get in, there's the issue of headroom. It's actually not as bad as you think. I mean, I'm 5'11", and if I sit up straight, then I do have a bit of headroom, but someone over 6 foot is going to struggle. Also, if I sit back, then my head is hitting this ridge here. Actually, considering how sloping this roofline is, it's not too bad back here. But the reason BMW have been able to do that is by lowering this back seat, and as a result it feels like, well, like I've almost got my knees around my ears because the floor seems quite high, and it's almost like I'm a horse racing jockey. That's a shame because knee room is actually very good. That could get a little bit tiring after a while. What could also get tiring is if you have to take the middle seat, because yeah, look at that, it's pretty small. It's just a perch really, and yeah, it's not that great back here. I think overall a Porsche Macan is much better for carrying rear passengers. Then there's the boot. That tapered tailgate means it's smaller than the X3's and therefore less useful. And when you fold the seats down, the total load volume is noticeably less than you get with its rivals. I'm not totally convinced by the design either. I just don't think the coupe SUV thing works quite so well on this smaller X4 as it does on the larger X6. It just doesn't have the same road presence, and I think the main reason to have this over the more practical X3 is because of the way it looks. And really, if you want a sporty, cool looking small SUV, a Range Rover Evoque is a better bet. And if you want to be able to see out the back window of your car, then any other vehicle is a better bet because the rear visibility in the X4 is absolutely terrible. Finally, there's the price, because the X4 is rather expensive, though I have no doubt they'll have no effect on how well this thing sells, because I think it's going to be very popular, but what the heck. Anyway, before you buy one of these things, you should still check out our reviews of its main rivals, such as the Porsche Macan by clicking on that window up there, and of course the Range Rover Evoque by clicking on that window down there. Click down here, you can watch our very latest video review, and if you click up there on our logo, you can subscribe to the Carbuyer YouTube channel.